It was their proximity in the alphabet that put Canada and China next to each other in the G20 working session. The body language suggested their two leaders had little to say to each other. But despite the awkwardness, Trudeau and Xi did make time for a 2-minute meeting later in the day with interpreters present. The Prime Minister's office hasn't released any details on what was said. Xi's biggest bilateral meeting here is with U.S. President Donald Trump tomorrow. Millions of jobs in China depend on exports to the U.S. Nearly half of those exports are under U.S. tariffs, with the threat of more tariffs hanging over the rest.
We're meeting with China. Just so you know, China has been paying us billions and billions of dollars. Until I got here, they never paid this country 10 cents. So we'll see what happens.
Trump has pledged to talk about more than just trade and tariffs. In Washington last week, he told Trudeau he'll use the meeting to call on China to release the two detained Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor.
Anything I can do to help Canada, I will be doing.
Canadian officials say they're confident Trump will raise the issue when he meets Xi tomorrow, but they can't predict how Xi will respond. One former diplomat is skeptical that Trump's intervention will make that much difference.
Unless the words are accompanied by some action, then I think the Chinese will listen, but I don't think in the short term it's going to have any significant impact.
China has been hearing about this issue from a broad group of countries.
Today, Trudeau met with the leaders of several of those European countries that have backed Canada on the detainees issue, but their words of support haven't freed Kovrig and Spavor. One former ambassador says if this summit ends with no positive movement from China, the Trudeau government will face a choice.
The fact that it took place, I think it's a sign of small progress, but still important one. But I think that it will leave the Canadian government with some very tough decisions to make, and I would say that probably coming out of the G20 summit, they should announce further measures that will be taken to protect Canadian interests.
We do not escalate, and we do not back down.
Today, China's foreign ministry also posted some unusually conciliatory remarks by departing ambassador to Canada, Liu She, the man who recently said relations had hit rock bottom. The current difficulties in Canada-China relations are only temporary, he said. Canada-China friendship has a deep history and a history that's unstoppable. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Osaka.
Another important meeting, Donald Trump's G20 meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, was closely watched. Denials of Russian election interference and agreement with Putin on the matter are now routine Trump behaviors at summits. But even by those standards, this was a remarkable moment. So some saw Trump mocking the idea of election interference here, sharing a joke with Putin at the expense of critics back home, likely well received by those who see the idea of interference as overblown, even fabricated. Of course, former U.S. Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report lays out a mountain of evidence that in 2016, Russia worked to help Trump and that his campaign often welcomed that help.
A little bit of a bad deal based on...
There were multiple, systematic efforts to interfere in our election. And that allegation deserves the attention of every American.
If this American is giving it much attention, he's not letting it show. But the political threat posed by Mueller's investigation isn't completely behind Trump. Mueller testifies publicly before Congress next month.